Good.
And we are coming up on 5 after, so why don't we go ahead and get going. All right, welcome everybody to the May 16th, 2024 edition of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. We come together every other week because we think that working together as a community, we can do more as a group to make the world more secure than we can individually, trying to bring out confidential computing. We are an open source organization, and everybody is welcome to come constructively participate. We also abide by the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy. If you want to read more about that, you can go to linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. I think we've got a pretty fun agenda for today. We're going to defer the normal order of going through announcements and go straight into the tech talk after we do intros. We've got guest speaker from NSF and maybe a colleague from OSTP as well. But we will introduce our speakers in a little bit. After that, we've got a few announcements that you see listed there, and then we are going to go back over our 2024 goals so that each of the TAC members kind of understands their responsibilities and the context for what those goals are. And I didn't jot in the next meeting agenda. I think we've got Nathaniel coming up. Yeah, Nathaniel with Roots of Trust. Let me pencil that in. Is there anything else that anybody sees missing from the agenda today? Okay. Hearing nothing, I'm going to move forward. So we don't have anything to vote on today, so we won't be taking a roll call, but these are the voting members obligated by the companies you see in the left column. And if I do a quick scan, it looks like we might be near quorum if we needed it.
Yes, we are.
Great. We don't, but it's nice to see everybody attending. So now we said goodbye to Ben and Lily last week, but this week we get to say hello again to Helen. So we've said welcome back to you in a couple meetings, but I think this is your first TAC meeting back, so welcome back to the TAC.
Oh, hey. Thanks, Dan.
For those who have joined while Helen was out, Helen is on staff like Rian, and we rely on Helen quite a bit to make things successful here in the consortium. And now we're at the point in the meeting where if you haven't introduced yourself to the rest of the community at least twice, you are welcome to do so. We'd like to know what your interest is in confidential computing, how you like to be addressed with your pronouns, and where you're joining from.
I'm Mick Bowman. I have spent a considerable amount of time, mostly with the Hyperledger group, working on confidential and privacy preserving smart contracts and extensible architectures for that. I have a long history with Dan and several others of you on this call. So, thank you.
Nice to have you join, Mick.
Yeah, hi, this is Harold Gilkey. I'm currently at AMD, working closely with David Kaplan, involved in our confidential computing activities around SUV and SMP.
Great to have you joining, Harold. Are you the alternate for David, or are you just?
I am.
Just joining?
No, I'm an alternate. That's correct.
Okay, great. Do we have you listed as an alternate?
I don't know. I think this all just happened in the last week or so. So
Okay.
I'll double check. But I know internally I'm supposed to be the alternate.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
Dan, it's worth mentioning that AMD is now a new member, and so it's great to have AMD on board.
Yeah, indeed. And we welcomed David onto the TAC last week, I think. So I don't see David in the list right now, but welcome Harold as well. Nice to have AMD on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think with the upgraded membership, we now have all of the major CPU vendors and maybe all of the major silicon vendors generally on the list.
Ben, while you're on that slide with the AMD topic, I just put it in chat, but would that not now be 6 members required for quorum? I don't, just a question. I don't know exactly. Because it's 10, right? So I guess majority would be 6, but I don't know if it's majority required.
50%.
It can be exactly 50%. Okay, interesting. Yeah, then 5.
Yeah, 5.5 is a good answer then.
0.5. Okay.
And we have 6, so we're good.
Okay. Fair question though on what constitutes quorum.
Say, Dan, I haven't introduced myself in quite a while, and I think I've been around a little bit, but I wanted to sort of mention that one of the roles that I play is as the general member representative to the board. And so I've been, some of you reaching out to sort of see if you have issues as a general member that you're interested in bringing forward. So I just want to raise my hand and say, you know, if you're a general member and you're not on the board and you need somebody to represent an issue, please let me know.
Thanks for raising that, Chris, and thanks for your contributions out on the board. All right. Well, why don't I roll us then into the
Can I interrupt you for one moment, please? Oh, okay. This is Jeremy Epstein. Is James Joshi in? Did he manage to get in? I just got an email from him.
I'm here.
I'm here. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, we're just about to introduce you. So, Mark, do you want to kick off the intros there? Mr. Novak?
You're muted, Mark.
Yes, sorry. I referred James to the TAC and Jeremy because they reached out to my employer to talk about confidential computing. And when I listened to them talk, I figured that, you know, an even better audience for their pitch would be the TAC. So I will leave it to them to you know, talk through the rest of it.
Okay.
All right, well, I will give up the presentation floor so you can feel free to share any slides that you like. And thanks again for joining us. We're excited to have representatives from the NSF and the OSTP.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for inviting us. It's a great pleasure to be here. Let me introduce myself and then I'll pass it on to Jeremy. I'm James Joshi. I'm an expert program director at NSF, Technology, Innovation, and Partnership Directorate, which really focuses on translational research. But before I became part of TIP, I was part of Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace program for 4 years as a program director, and I was managing the privacy portfolio. And we see a lot of, we have seen a lot of confidential computing related proposals and so forth. And we're here to talk about new initiative that we hope some of you can join. And I should mention this initiative actually came out of a lot of discussion with our colleagues here, Chris and Mick. Chris and Mick, thanks a lot for a lot of discussions we have had, and please feel free to jump in later on when we go through the slides. Let me pass it on to Jeremy, who actually was my team leader at SATC when I was there, and now he's in even a better place.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. It's my pleasure to join you as well. So as James said, I'm with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, and we're focusing. There was a recent executive order from President Biden on artificial intelligence, and one of the items in that was to encourage government agencies to use more privacy enhancing technologies, and in particular directing NSF, and James has a slide that gives the specific quotation to encourage more research funding in this area, and more collaboration between academics moving things out of the research lab and into production. And that's why we're here talking to you today, is that the White House thinks this is really important. And part of that is I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do a White House announcement of partnerships in this program. That's not guaranteed, but we're trying to do something in that space. And so I'll turn it back to James, who is the guy who's actually making everything happen.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I'll quickly walk through the few slides, and just to, in case some of you may not be familiar with NSF, the National Science Foundation is one of the key federal agencies focused on supporting through funding, mainly academia, to foster basic research as well as translational research. The TIP directorate I mentioned is now 2 years old, created through congressional mandate to foster, to accelerate more translational research. And this initiative is, we're trying to create another opportunity to support academia as well as small businesses to accelerate, promote privacy preserving technologies, focus on enhancing data sharing. So the key goals is to support projects that addresses privacy preserving data sharing and analytics technologies, mainly focus on different application scenarios, basically user inspired and translational research, as we call it in NSF, how to mature and scale privacy preserving technology to enhance data sharing. And also basically the underlying philosophy is how to derive data, the value from data that we have. And we have zettabytes of data, and it's growing exponentially. How to make sure we are able to get insight into data, accelerate more efficient decision-making processes and so forth. So the initiative is aligned with executive order, as Jeremy has highlighted. It has specific expectations from different agencies. From NSF side, for instance, we are required to foster or prioritize research that addresses trustworthy AI in general, and also encourage adoption of leading-edge PET solution or privacy-enhancing technologies for agencies, as well as in general democratization of privacy technologies. Also, it emphasizes testing environments, test beds, how to ensure there is a easy pathway for design, development, and deployment of PETs that support trustworthy AI as well. So in addition to the executive order, this initiative is also aligned with the national strategy to advance privacy preserving data sharing and analytics. So I was a co-chair for this national strategy writing activity. And one of the strategic priority here is really to accelerate transition to practice privacy technology. So in many discussions, we heard that there's a lot of good ideas in a theoretical stage, and typically it takes 10 to 15 years to really take that idea into actual practice. And so one of the goals here is to how to fill that gap, how to accelerate translational research to make sure we have from lab to practice achieved in a shorter time frame. And so that's where the focus is. We want to build two repositories, usable tools, democratize them, build test beds, and so forth. So these are the goals from this particular strategic priority. And in all cybersecurity and privacy strategies that I have been involved in, one of the big things that comes is there is a very, very important critical need for fostering public-private partnership. And this is one of the things that we have been really trying to emphasize. So this initiative, again, is about supporting academic and projects from academia as well as small businesses to support in 3 different tracks. One is focus on advancing key techniques or technologies for data sharing and analytics. So this is really point solution focus in a way. So if there is a particular cryptographic techniques like multi-party computation or homomorphic encryption to be used in a particular application scenario, for instance, in edge cloud environment, how can that be matured or scaled up for deployment? So it's really focused on deployment challenges, not on basic research. We have secure and trustworthy cyberspace program that has been funding for many years on these basic research, and this is adding to the translational side. Track 2 is really focused on integrated and comprehensive solutions for enhancing trustworthy data sharing. And here we are looking at end-to-end guarantees, right? So, and confidential computing actually is a centerpiece for Track 2 because we're talking about end-to-end guarantees means how to build this chain of trust to provide security and privacy guarantees when there's data sharing involved, there's analytics involved, multiple parties involved, and so forth. And this provides a root of trust down to the hardware level. So this is really something that can look at multiple issues when data sharing is involved. So how to protect data during their use using confidential computing, what kind of privacy policy can be enforced, how other aspects during the data sharing life cycle we need to address. These are, I think it's a more comprehensive system development activity that we are trying to focus on. Track 3 is, in many discussions, we heard that there's lack of tools for even data curators, data stewards to really understand what kind of privacy technologies they should use to share their data, right, from agencies and so forth. And so enhancing two repositories that are usable, that can be used by, very different types of stakeholders, building test beds to really understand, assess different privacy technologies are some of the focus in Track 3. So with this, before moving forward, I would pause to let Jeremy also chime in because I understand the White House administration is really interested in this space.
Right. It is an area that the White House sees as critical in addressing a number of topics around, especially relating to AI. And so that's why we really want to have increase the level of cooperation between industry and academia through this research program. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, and again, I would like to note especially that Chris and Mick were very influential in helping come up with these track concepts. So thanks again, Chris and Mick, and please feel free to chime in at some point. And
yeah, I want to just sort of mention that it's been great working with you all over the last, I don't know how many months or maybe even years. I really appreciate the way OSTP and NITRD put out the RFI a couple of years ago and got us all to think about what would make a contribution And many people in the Confidential Computing Consortium did submit responses to that, and it's great to see that you picked up on those. I've mentioned to people here the one that personally I worked on, and put it in the chat here, that really inspired me to talk about possibility of confidential computing to support advanced privacy, and there are many people here who are working on things like that. So it's really nice that you're here to talk about it.
Thanks, Chris. And we have had discussion with other stakeholders like banks and even SWIFT, which is really big international financial institutions, and we hear a lot about their interest in confidential computing. So this track 2 is really, and it's really your contribution, Chris and Mick, for track 2. So thanks again. So with regards to this is initiative to support the projects along the line of NSF's mission. And I should mention is NSF is the biggest contributor in computing and information science and engineering in terms of providing funds to academia to do basic research. So it provides about 85% of federal funds in that space. And so partnerships so far we have, I guess I skipped, collaboration benefits. So naturally there would be question about what benefits partners, collaborators would have if you were to join this initiative and support the projects that we would select. First is there's tremendous opportunity to interact with project teams. We would typically have PI meetings or meetings of researchers that are supported by this initiative. And in some cases, you may be able to have separate team members working informally with the supported teams. We have seen that there's a specific need for use cases to be promoted. So we have actually Department of Transportation providing, traffic analysis as a use case, and they are part of the collaboration from agency side. There's opportunity to work with other partners, and this is actually something I picked up from Mick, you, and Chris. I see when we were discussing, it brings different perspectives and cross-fertilizes our take on from different perspectives in the privacy space. And so technology sectors have their own perspective, even in different technology areas like confidential computing and test beds and so forth. We have been interacting with financial sectors, and they have their own perspectives when it comes to data sharing. And so that really cross-fertilizes the partners that are involved in supporting this initiative as well. And most importantly, from my personal perspective, this is a call for national and global priority for public-private partnership, which sometimes is difficult. I come from academia. I'll be shortly going back to my University of Pittsburgh as professor full-time. There's a growing gap between industry research and academia, and so that's one reason in national strategies that I've been involved in terms of discussion and writing, always comes as there's growing really significant need to bring together public-private sector. So, and coming together and supporting privacy preserving data analytics related initiative, from my perspective, really stands out as a strong statement that this is a national need and all stakeholders are together to push forward and accelerate that area. And confirm partners, go ahead, Chris.
Can I make one clarification? I'm not sure if it came out clearly, but there are two different ways that companies and universities can participate in this program. One way is what you're describing now, to be kind of a co-sponsor of the initiative and to contribute resources.
Yes.
But there's
Can
also
Can I jump in?
proposer. Yeah, please.
I would like to hold a little bit on those discussion.
Yeah,
And I'll let
actually,
you know. Okay.
Sorry, if I can jump in for one second. I have to run off to another meeting, but I really appreciate everyone's interest in this. And if anyone has any questions for me about the White House's interest, please feel free to reach out directly to me, James and Chris, and probably a lot of others here do have my contact information. And I'd be happy to discuss any questions on the White House's interests. So thanks very much for inviting me, and I'm going to run off.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy. Chris, thanks for raising that question. I wanted to hold off because Jeremy mentioned that he has to quickly leave. And also White House is here to support the general concept, and I think they probably would not like to be part of the funding discussion. So there are different ways we have been trying to develop the partnership. One is co-funding, so leveraging resources. So that includes co-funding, and that's one primary area that I hope you can consider going back to your teams and discussing whether you can join this initiative as a co-funding partner. Another option is to provide access to resources, and so that may be, for example, thanks to Mick and Intel. Intel would be providing confidential computing resource access to the teams that we will select. And also in some cases, this is really user-inspired activity. Application use cases are very important. So in some cases, we hope partners would be available as first adopters for the technologies that will be developed through the support of this initiative. Chris, sorry, I had to just cut in while you were asking. Did I capture that? Or?
I think so. Maybe we'll come back to it towards the end. But I think you're inviting collaboration, and that's an important message to get across.
And yeah, so far,
the flip side of that is also that if there are others here who would be looking for funding through the project, that's an opportunity as well, potentially. So.
Yeah. So these are so far the confirmed or almost confirmed. So Intel, and thanks Mick, has been so instrumental in shaping up the initiative, as is Chris. So VMware, Chris, we were very sad when we had slightly different direction because of the acquisition time period. But we are happy that it is back, and we are almost confirmed that VMware will be partner, and both are co-funding partners. And this will be multi-year solicitation, but right now we're focused on this first solicitation, and partners have provided different levels of support. Within NSF, there are multiple units that are interested and providing different levels of support. Biggest being TIP, the Technology Innovation and Partnership Directorate, but there are also directorates from SISE, Computing and Information Science and Engineering Directorate, chipping in different levels of funding. And as I mentioned, Intel is sharing, providing access to SGX and TDX resources for projects that would use confidential computing. We have Federal Highway Administration chipping in good amount of money because they are really interested in fostering privacy-preserving analysis of traffic data. So as there's innovation in traffic management and in the vehicle, autonomous vehicle, future of autonomous vehicle environment and so forth, they're really looking forward to that. NIST is a resource provider and potential partner for teams that would be funded. They are not currently for this initial phase providing co-funding support, but they are developing privacy-preserving federated learning platform, and they have they will be welcoming funded projects to use these as assessment test beds or for co-designing and improving it. So we're talking to many others, and as Mark had mentioned, we have reached out to Mark and his group as well as others. So I'll pause here for any quick question. I have one last slide on timeline, but I wanted to check on time also to make sure.
Yeah, we're good on time. We're happy to take whatever time you have available to give us here. So I see these partnerships here. What about on sort of like the receiving end? Are there universities that are already in position to receive this, or you say more on that end?
Sure. So this is really focused on translational research. So we are going to be funding the eligible people who can submit their proposal to this initiative would be from academia as well as small businesses. So small businesses typically, because they are very much involved in creating new products, solutions, and so forth. So we wanted to really emphasize academicians to also focus significantly on the actual deployment of good ideas. I mean, this is really not going to support basic research. It is saying that, okay, you have the basic research done, find a way to make it practical, make it efficient for practical deployment, even though in a particular use case scenarios. So the funding target would be academicians as well as small businesses and the non or civil societies. Alec, you have. I hope that answers Dan.
Yes, thank you.
First, thanks, James, for sharing this content. It's super informative and useful. I appreciate you taking the time to share it with us. You mentioned during one of your slides that you see a divergence between the approaches taken by academicians and approaches taken by the commercial sector in how to approach privacy preserving technologies, and that's concerning. I'd love to see the academic research community leading the way in advancing the cause. Can you help us understand where some of the divergence is taking place so that we can understand the differences better?
That's a very, very important question. Thanks for asking, Alex. So I was part of SATC PI meeting 2 years back. I was still with SATC, and there was a lot of discussion because most of the SATC, the Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace Program, it funds basic research. So since I'm an academician, the perspective we have is we want to do some innovations on a theoretical space, demonstrate the key proof of concept, and then move on to new ideas, right? So at that point, it stays, the idea, however brilliant it is, it stays at that stage, and the academicians, the way the system has worked is there's no incentive to move forward to actually seeing the deployment of their idea. And so that actually is becoming a huge issue of discussion, at least in the security privacy community. It was a huge discussion in SATC PI meeting last time, and there was a lot of feedback saying that we need to have NSF support these translational research so that academicians can really be incentivized to carry on that. I think that is part of the system that we are also trying to help evolve because in academia, we are really expected to some extent to do theoretical contribution, And when it comes to system deployment and, actually developing the system and deploying it, because the theoretical underpinning of that system has already been published elsewhere, this may not count as significantly in our evaluations. And so that's the system I have been accustomed to, and we're trying to address to some extent from that perspective. NSF funding is considered very heavily in academia. So this program, so if academicians would get support from this program, NSF funding as it is in general will be highly valued. So that's one aspect. So the feedback was NSF should really promote translational research. And this is one of that effort in this particular space. I hope that answers to some extent, Alec.
I think so. Let me see if I can rephrase the high points there, and you can correct me if I've misinterpreted. So, and first off, I think the funding that we're discussing here is geared more towards small businesses. Since I'm with Microsoft, we don't have a pony in this race, but it's certainly something that I want to see encouraged with small businesses because we all benefit. I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's not that industry and academia are pursuing alternative paths towards privacy preserving technologies. It's that academia is identifying some very interesting research ideas that the commercial sector has been slow to implement. Maybe for commercial reasons, maybe for other reasons, but it's not that we're diverging in the approach that we want to take. It's that academicians are identifying new venues for preserving privacy that just aren't gaining traction in the commercial sector, and that's the gap you see.
That is true. I agree with that interpretation. I mean, that's one aspect of it. Although there's significant research from industry side, there's a little gap in the collaboration between industry and academia for different purposes. First is some of these require heavy resources, and academia may not have that. For instance, the AI research currently, it's very difficult, I think, from academia to do large language model unless there's really close collaboration with industry. And so I think privacy side also, there's a lot of interest from academia on the theory side, but when it comes to taking it to the practice, it breaks up somewhere in the middle. And so that's one of the gap, but I'm not suggesting that academia and industry are focused on different things.
Yeah, it was just to expand on that. I think one of the things that's interesting to us is the opportunity to take the excellent component technologies that are being built by the academics and fit them together in this end-to-end pipeline, right? So, a particular differential privacy algorithm is fantastic, but it needs to understand the motivations of the Department of Transportation for releasing the information and a set of policies under which that information can be moved and positioned and operated. And so you end up with a new set of research problems that are specifically about how the technologies fit together, rather than focusing on just the component technologies where the excellence already exists.
Thanks, Mick. I think that's excellent addition. I would just emphasize that I think since I'm academician myself, sometimes there's a challenge with regards to really drive our research based on use cases, right? Specific use cases like traffic analysis that Department of Transportation might be interested in. And it's partly also driven by the challenge in sharing the data they might have, right? So all these issues come in terms of further facilitating collaboration between industry and use case stakeholders and so forth with academia. Yeah, while you're thinking of another question, maybe I'll just touch on this. This initiative has been under discussion for quite some time, as Chris has mentioned. Chris was really the initiator for this. So again, thank you, Chris, for this initial idea that evolved into 3 tracks. And right now, when we started the discussion for this initiative, it was not the executive order on AI was not published. Now that has become also a significant driver for this initiative. So we're trying to actually meet the executive order timeline mandated to NSF, which means we need to publish this call for proposal or solicitation by June 26. That gives a very tight timeline to work out things. We do have a month or so time frame to devote to internal NSF approval process for clearing everything to release the solicitation. And so it is a tight timeline, but what we have decided is if there is any partner interested to join immediately, we will try our best to onboard and be the original partner in the solicitation. But at the same time, even if the solicitation is out, we are creating a framework to onboard and welcome additional partners to join before the submission deadline. So assuming that we are able to release the solicitation by June 26, while we're engaged in the approval process within NSF, we were planning to engage with potential partners. And by the time the solicitation is out, we might have additional partners to announce, and we'll have separate web page where we'll be adding additional partners and their interest areas and contributions. So I should also emphasize that we welcome partners to be interested in supporting, engaging in a particular track or all of the tracks. For instance, Intel MIC has particular interest in track 2 because it is much more holistic solution development that the track 2 focuses on. But NIST, for instance, is very interested in track 3, testbed development, platform development, and so forth. So we can accommodate interest areas. If any partner has a particular area of interest, and this is a confidential consortium, so track 2 seems like the best area if you have interest to join this initiative. Dan.
I just want to summarize a couple things to make sure my takeaways are right. So the overall goal of this, we might say, is moving things out of research silos or basic research into the next stage where it's more productizable, adoptable, scalable. Is that right so far?
One key point I would like to emphasize is this is funding initiative. So we're creating a funding program to help, as you have mentioned.
Yes. Okay. So it's funding in order to facilitate that. And then there's sort of like 2 ways to participate. One is to help facilitate through the funding. The other is to be on the recipient end. Those are the 2 main mechanisms here. Or did I miss one?
So recipient and by that, did you mean the proposers being the proposer?
Right, like the PIs, the academician.
Yeah, if you meet the eligibility criteria, that's fine. This is targeted towards supporting academic researchers and nonprofit organizations and small businesses. So if that criteria applies to you, that's welcome. In general, also, project teams always reach out to industry for collaboration. NSF might not be able to fund the industry collaborator because of eligibility criteria, but there's always informal collaboration that could be established. Fritz.
Right. Okay. So, and then Alec, to your comment about not having a horse in the race, you wouldn't have a horse in the race from the sense of consuming funding from this, but Microsoft could be, I guess, funding a horse. So there's still ways to participate for the large companies here.
That is great. Personally, I'm trying to emphasize co-funding if possible, but we can also, explore partnership where partner is providing substantial resource access so that the projects can really be helped in terms of pushing the ideas forward.
Okay, great. And then the last thing before I give Fritz a chance to talk here is sometimes we hear from an NSF-funded group called the Center for Distributed Confidential Computing, and I've linked that in the chat. I'm curious if there's any direct interaction with the CDCC.
I'm very familiar with that. I was one of the program director involved in making decision for that project. So this is NSF funded project, and so we'll be funding projects like that through this initiative, and we encourage the funded projects to interact with each other as well as with industry to make sure the ideas proposed are successfully implemented. I'm very familiar with this. This is a SATC Frontier project, one of our biggest program in SATC. And so, yeah, this touches on the confidential computing substances.
Thank you. Fritz.
Maybe just one more question, even if it's obvious from your end, on touching on Dan's first point on the reach of the project or the program. We have quite some members not US based in the CCC, right? Like some EU, some Asia based. Can you maybe elaborate on, like, does this also reach other regions in the US, or for other academics, etc., for companies? Just to understand that part.
That's a very good question. So NSF, because this is federal, we are using the tax money to fund the projects. We are restricted to funding US entities. So if you have an international company, but you have a US presence, so that entity within US could be part of the collaboration in terms of funding. But for collaboration, we welcome exploring collaboration in the sense that as a co-funding partner, we would definitely welcome exploring that aspect. We plan for next round and so forth, potentially to also have multinational collaboration to support. Whenever we have multinational program, NSF would fund the US based researchers, and the partner in other countries would fund their researchers, and they could form one team. So I can talk more about that, but right now we have not done multinational collaboration, but with the emphasis from administration, that may be something for the next round to explore. But with
that's what I wanted to figure out. Yeah, so you are technically open to, let's say, academics being not funded but joining the program, but not in this round yet. Is that what you're saying?
So it is fine to be the part of the project as a collaborator from outside US, but NSF can't provide the funding for that.
Yeah, of course. But some of these, as far I haven't touched the NSF programs yet, but as far as I understand, there's also sometimes only US even for involvement, and sometimes it's fine for involvement but not funding, right? So just wanted to understand before sending this to some folks in Europe and making them excited that this is not open for interaction.
Yeah, if you want to join as a co-funding partner, that should be actually fine, and we can explore that. I was talking more from the proposer's point of view.
Of course, thanks.
Yeah. Any further question, clarification? Chris?
I just want to say it's, the TIP directorate is new, and its focus on translational research and innovation, not just the invention, but getting things out into the world where they can be used. It's an important new development at the National Science Foundation. And, it's been great working with you, James, and your colleagues. It's this idea of collaborating with industry to identify directions and at the same time continue to deeply value the fundamental research is really helpful. So I just want to put in a plug for people who have ideas that are appropriate for the TIP directorate or other parts of the NSF. It's just really nice to be able to work with partners that pay attention and are actually getting stuff done. So thank you, James.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, unless you have questions, I wanted to take a moment to again thank you for having me here to share this initiative. And I should again emphasize this initiative would not have been possible without involvement from Chris and Meg. So Chris, again, thanks. And this is exactly what we need more of, input from industry partners with regards to where the initiative should focus on to bring the academia, the nonprofit organizations, as well as for-profit organizations to collaborate on. So again, thanks for having me. And if you have any questions, I would be very happy to jump on Zoom call to discuss further and bring other colleagues who might be much more aligned if needed. So we are moving forward with this solicitation with current partners in the original list of partnership. But as I mentioned, because of the timeline, otherwise we would have waited for more partners to onboard. But even in this first round, as soon as the solicitation is out, we hope to add more partners. So once the solicitation is out, there is at least 90 days before the proposals are submitted. And so I would be happy to explore your interest, answer any question for making decisions. Again, thanks. Okay. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Mark, and everyone.
All right, thanks to you. Great to hear about this exciting opportunity coming up on the horizon. I hope the member companies here take advantage of getting in on the early partnership.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let me get the slides back up here. And I think what we're going to do is there we go. Okay. I think because we've got good attendance here from a lot of the TAC members, what I want to do is get into the meatier subject that we have on the agenda, and then we'll come back around to the announcements as we reach the end of that. So just to eyeball the list again, it looks like we've got Harold from AMD, we've got Nathaniel now from ARM, Catherine from Google. This is always a bad time of day for Howard. I'm here. Do we have Henry or Kevin? Do not see them on the list. Alec and Fritz. Yash IM'd me that he's got a conflict this morning, so I appreciated the heads up on that. We do not have Ram, though, as the alternate. And do we have Mingshen or Yao? No. Okay. Nonetheless, that's still pretty good across the board. What we wanted to do was go over the TAC goals. So I've got that linked in there, but I can paste this into chat as well. So there's a few goals within goals with what we want to do. One is just at the top level here, we talked through this earlier in the year that why is it that we think it's a good time to spend this time together? And it's that we actually want to make a difference with security. So that's sort of like the overall motivating intent for a lot of us to be here. But when it comes to measurable aspects of that, that's where we broke it into 3 different areas. And within each of these, we want something tangible. So at the end of 2024, we can say to ourselves, you can say to your management what it was, the outcome was from the time that you spent, not just in these meetings, but the time between them. And so it's broken into projects, ecosystem, and community. With projects, sort of one of the, the main aspects of creating the CCC was to have a place for confidential computing projects. So one of our main reasons for being is to support the open source projects. So we've got 3 goals that we identified for that at the beginning of the year. One was, let's make sure that these projects are secure. And there's some best practices and some way to do accounting on that using this OpenSSF badge. We've had discussions among some of us of moving from, once we've got conformance to that badge, to moving out to the next step, which would be OpenSSF scorecard. But basically like measurable aspects to make sure that the projects that we're putting out are actually secure projects. Right now, this is mostly Sal and myself on that particular goal. But as we go through these, the idea is to figure out, is this something that's meaningful to you as a contributor here? Is it something that's meaningful to your company so that you take ownership of that? And then as we go throughout the rest of the year, you can make use of TAC time as a working session to help forward this goal, or you can come in and give us a status on how that's going, or try to solicit support from other contributors here to arrive at these ends. The second one here is on the mentors of each of us. This is sort of like something that we've all signed up for by being on the TAC, that we're here to help out the projects. So this really just captures this long-standing responsibility of TAC members. And then the last one is that because confidential computing is so new, we need to get this stuff upstreamed into the Linux kernel, and that can be a lengthy process. So we wanted to come up with ways to accelerate that. This was, I know, meaningful to at least Google, and so Catherine's predecessors were on this. And Catherine, I think, tentatively signed up for this in one of our last meetings. So I want to pause here after giving sort of a taste of what these topics are and going through the first one with projects, and just check in and see, does this make sense? The background that we're going through and the understanding of what responsibilities we each have as TAC members. So I'm going to flash back to this list before we go further through the TAC goals. And we have each of you penciled in for a date to come talk about, this has to be refreshed. To come do a working session or a talk on the topic. And again, this is really less about coming in and doing a presentation and more about making sure that we're using this time together towards some tangible end.
Hey, Dan, I'll work with you online on the calendar. I see my date got moved up a week and I'm not available then. And maybe just the columns got mixed up. So we'll work offline, fix that up.
Yeah, thanks, Alec. The second bucket here, ecosystem, this is exactly what we just went through from the tech talk, is we want to have interactions with academia. We want to be able to influence NIST and other organizations to make sure that they appropriately recommend and recognize confidential computing. Some of this is founded in a recognition that, like, when we go out to conferences, we've heard from people who went to RSA and in a few of the other CCC forums that, you know, we're still in a point where people, even within the security community, don't know what confidential computing is. So we want to be at a point where we are mindful of how confidential computing is adopted. We can be prescriptive in how it's used, but we're still like a stage or two behind that people just aren't even familiar with it. So we've got 3 things on here that are meant to address that need for recognition. The first one is the kind of RFC responses that were just alluded to. So it's kind of cool to hear, like, the thing that we responded to in 2022 is starting to bear fruit now. So these are long lead times, but all the more reason to attack them as aggressively as we can now. This second one was sort of a call out to the attestation SIG. So where we've got the kernel SIG up in the first set of things, this one is really more of what would be a real useful outcome from this attestation SIG. We do a lot of interesting conversation there. And so there's benefits to learning from each other, and those are kind of hard to measure, but it would be a measurable outcome to have something like a document that describes a, how did somebody phrase it before? Like a blueprint. You know, here's an example reference architecture for how you adopt attestation in some business use case. I don't think anybody has picked this one up to work with it. The attestation STIG is still making good progress with things, but this particular goal to help industry understand what attestation is and how to actually employ it has not been picked up yet. And then the third one is, you know, exactly what we just heard from, and maybe this is of interest to Fritz based on earlier comments. Any questions on the ecosystem bucket?
Yeah, maybe we can have a short 1-minute discussion on that, because so I basically just put my name there to say, hey, I want to also join that one. But I still need to understand a little bit what has been done and what discussions have we had on the academia engagement side. So I already just chatted with Chris. I will reach out to him to have a chat there. But anyone else who also talked or engaged with the academic side, please let me know or write me, because then I'm happy to coordinate more or get that more going and move that forward. But I don't want to just rush in somewhere where there has already been some work. So yeah, I just wanted to coordinate first and get the grips on what's going on.
Yeah, I don't really think that there's too much to ramp you on. The discussion that we still have recorded down here mostly came from Chris and I think John Manfredelli, that were ideas about how to be engaged. And clearly Chris has been tangibly engaged with NSF, but maybe a little bit more in his previous role for his company than from a CCC perspective. There's the CDCC organization or like funding group that or funded research area that I linked in chat earlier. So we hear from them periodically. They are on the agenda to come back in September, or at least one of those investigators is. Frankly, I'm kind of surprised we don't hear from them more. There should be a pool of several projects based on that list of principal investigators. And so why we only hear from them once a year, I'm not sure.
Okay, perfect. Then I think I will maybe think with Chris and then later we get back to you, and then maybe we will move up a discussion on the academic sides in a month or 2 months to bring that to the TAC, and then we can kind of have a more formal kickoff for that than just some thoughts. Okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you for that. And this is almost worded well enough now. Don't feel obligated to stick to it. But for each of these, we want, again, a measurable outcome. And maybe that's that we've identified the top 10 projects, top 10 academic projects, and we've created 10 blog posts about them, or we've facilitated the demo videos that we've put up for projects in the past. So there's different ways to help shine the light on these projects. Or there might be something more meaningful that you come up with. It's not just advertising a project. Maybe it's spinning something from the research in as a CCC funded project, or I shouldn't say funded, as a CCC adopted project.
Yeah, makes sense. Sounds good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious, actually. So I think about these as OKRs. My company uses objectives and key results. Some companies use KPIs, key performance indicators. Just kind of curious what people are used to doing in their regular day jobs. Do other companies use OKRs here?
We use OKRs at Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Same at ARM.
Yeah, same with Google.
Okay, so I think we can probably speak a little bit more succinctly then and phrase these directly as OKRs. And so where you're familiar with setting the objective for something and then setting a measurable key result, that's exactly what we're looking for here. And Alec, we had you up here, and I can't remember exactly what the gist of that was.
Has to outreach with compliance organizations, which myself and Mark on the and others as well on the GRC SIG are pushing for.
Great. Let me just make that more specific here. So TBD, your name here. Okay. The last bucket here is community. So open source organizations live and die by actually having contributors on projects, contributors who write documents, blog posts, help answer questions on projects. And then also the culture of the community. So we've got the first thing on here is meant to keep this collaborative culture that we have. We can always put up all sorts of rules, but those are never as effective as just starting from a place where when you enter the room, you see how people behave and you kind of follow suit with that behavior. Our main measurable mechanism for that has been that we recommend that the projects take the Linux Foundations class on inclusive open source training. And we like each of the TAC members to have taken that too. And that introduces you to things that are specific to open source that you might not have been exposed to within the other part of your working day. And that's things like when a pull request comes in, a lot of people take an unconscious decision based on the username that they see there. They sort of unconsciously infer things about that, and they might prioritize names that are more familiar to them versus ones that are less familiar to them. So I think it's interesting, and it's a well enough written class that it's also entertaining. Having somebody to champion that would be beneficial. So a lot of this kind of falls to Sal when we don't have a TAC leader taking hold of that. But we like to, as much as possible, rely on each of us as leaders and contributors in the community. The second one is a litany of things that we know are best practices for making sure that we're welcoming new contributors. One of them is making sure that we're out there in conferences and trying to make awareness for the CCC. The second one is being responsive on issues and pull requests. So one of the best things that you can do for developing your open source project is developing the community within that is making sure that if somebody's taken the time to write something up for your project or to ask a question, that they actually get an answer, even if that answer is, well, we don't know the answer to that, but we see your question there and it's acknowledged. And the last one on there is what Yash has done so well with, along with Sal, to make sure that we've got a way to onboard people who wouldn't otherwise be able to access the community through the mentorship. Questions on the community objectives? So Alec just mentioned he's not on the right place on the calendar. We moved some things around. It's a little bit of scheduling is always a challenging set intersection problem. So I don't want to.
It's not that you got me down for post quantum, and I know you folks don't want to hear talk about post quantum.
Separate columns. So we have three. So whenever we construct the agendas for the meetings, usually there's a project topic like Keystone coming in for their annual review.
Okay.
There's one of these goals that we're working on, and then there's a invited tech talk. So Hart Montgomery from another organization is going to come in and talk about post quantum that week. Whatever. Go ahead.
No, I'm acknowledging now. I understand. Still, that date doesn't work for me. I used to be on the 27th. It would work, but the 13th won't. I'll be out of the country.
Okay, so I don't want to do too much rescheduling here, but let's at least take care of that one. And I would be surprised if Howard can, actually he's got a month to sort that out, so we might be able to get that. What I would love live right now is for your people to pencil in their name on the objective or the key result that they want to drive, but just know that you are on the docket to come in at some point during the next few weeks and again lead a session towards one of those ends or give us an update on what's going on there. And maybe I will just pick on Nathaniel because I think we had you lined up. You had interest in a topic about roots of trust that I didn't fully internalize. It's not something that's directly listed on here. That's not a problem, but I want to make sure that it does get captured in the correct way here, and that people are on board that that's a useful and appropriate goal for the TAC.
Yeah, I need to do a tech talk about it.
Okay, so we'll plan on, I guess, ramping everybody on that during your session.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Okay, thanks. Mingshen, these also had predated your original involvement. Do you feel like you understand these a little better now?
Yeah. I think I'll come back and schedule one-on-one with you. See how I can contribute to different objectives here.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, and then Harold. Okay, I see you're on two places in the participants list for me, Harold.
Yeah,
This
sorry.
is maybe your first meeting here, fresh into this with no background, but let me just check in with you for AMD.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if it's okay, let me sync up with David and see what I think I understand what's going on here, but in terms of which one to champion and support, whatever, I need to see if David had already had something in mind or not, and then I can follow up with you afterwards.
Yeah, and I think David and I have a one-on-one scheduled for next Monday.
Okay.
So feel free to jump in on that time. Otherwise, he might have some more thoughts after we speak.
Okay, that's perfect. I'll try to attend that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right, let's head back into the announcements then, because there's some other work going on that might constitute a TAC goal. So the very first thing, Yash isn't here, but thanks to him and again to Sal for putting together a lot of materials to add some structure to the mentorship program that we have. This is all merged now, so where you've got interaction with projects, I remember Jörg from Coconut expressing some interest in this, that you can now put together a proposal for a project for a mentee to come in and work on, and then there's a stipend through the Linux Foundation. So something like an internship, but I think maybe there's some legal terminology there that we don't call them internships. Fritz.
There was one question I couldn't answer to that one. So there's one doc mentioned or linked in the PR on the initial time that this was approved by the board. And that initial improvement mentioned 6 slots. So is it still 6 funding opportunities that we have this year, or is it more, or will it become more, but it's still 6, or what's the situation there?
There hasn't been any change to the funding, and I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head, but I think there was allocation for 1 per project at one point, and that might have been last year before we expanded the number of projects, and then just a judgment that historically not all projects had used that. So the allocation is probably less than 1 per project, but I am certain that if we ended up having support from the projects, like willing mentors, we would be able to find the funding to support these.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Rian?
I quickly looked at the budget. We have budgeted $32,000 towards this. The method that the LFX used to pay for these stipends is they use the global expenditure ratio to calculate how much is being paid to the person related to the specific country that they work in. So it varies somewhere between $3,000 to $6,000 normally. So there's not a fixed number, but we have a budget. If it's the top number of 6,000, we can do 6.
Thanks for that backdrop. Okay, so it's something like $3,000 to $6,000 for a 3-month project.
And
Sounds
the only thing that I'll add is that the only unique thing about our mentorship program is the fact that we are accepting these on a rolling basis. They don't have to come in at a certain time. So if there's a great time that works for your team or a great time that works for the mentee that you want to bring in, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. So in the docs, I think it gives a specific timeline that's, I don't know, maybe starts in July. But that really only becomes relevant for us once we have a lot of these coming in, and it's hard to manage if we don't have like a specific cadence for them. But just to get the ball rolling, pretty much any timeline works. All right, next thing, coming out of the board meeting, We announced this last time, but there was some further discussion at the board, and I think more interest in getting these two working groups more operational. And Rian might have a few other things to say about these two.
All right. Okay, two working groups. So the brand repositioning working group is the most ambitious timeline-wise. So the idea is we would like to give feedback from the group to the governing board in the June meeting, which is June 26th, which gives us 6 weeks to participate in this. So we encourage, there's already several organizations that have their representative sign up. So the idea of the brand repositioning working group is to determine what do we say on the website, what is CCC, where are we going? So if your company have specific thoughts about that, please do participate and make sure that we represent to the world exactly what we think CCC is on our website. So the idea is to get all the ideas down and documented, shared with the GB for discussion. And once it's approved, between myself, Helen, LF support services, we will update the website. So you don't have to do the work, just need to bring the ideas. Then for governance working group, there was a discussion in the governing board meeting about what it entails to be a conformant CCC offering, looking at different methods in industry, running from a test suite to something like the Open SSF project, where you do just a document assessment. So the GB will add more goals into the document shortly. It was sent out yesterday for their comment. And then we would encourage every organization to join, put in their representatives. I believe everybody in this industry does have a horse in this race to shape what confidential computing conformance would be. So I will appreciate if everybody nominate somebody to to participate in the activity of conformance and the work to be done there. Any questions? Next time.
Okay, great. So I think that hits everything we wanted to do today. We had our tech talk. We went through our announcements just now. Everybody's refreshed on the goals. Next time, I guess we get to hear about Roots of Trust from Nathaniel. And I think that's it. Anything else from anyone? All right, well, you get a half hour back today. I'm sure that's something that we can all make use of, maybe to go through and get a start on some of these OKRs.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.